In this session, I'll demonstrate how to send announcements to students in the course. So from time to time, it is important that you communicate with the students whether the class is canceled or whether it is an online class and you want to remind them that the class is starting, or new weekly announcements in the class. So in this case, to send the announcement, you'll click here under Announcements at the very top of your course, and then you'll simply click on Add a New Topic, and then type the subject of your email, and then type the message for your students here. You can change to format this and such, how you want it. Notice that you can use any of those tools on the top here as well. And then if you go under Advanced area here, you could simply add attachments and such if necessary as well. And then finally, you simply press Post to Forum. At this point, the system will keep track of this message and you can preview it, and students also preview it or view it from the course itself. And then within 30 minutes time, or any time between now and 30 minutes, the system will also send an email out to all the students in the class. So there is no need for you to email them via Outlook or webmail or through the participants area here and such, or however else you have been doing it. It's best to send those announcements directly from the course module here, from the announcements module in the course. In this case, the system again keeps track of what was sent out. The students, in case they missed anything, they can always go back to the announcements area in the course. Now, typically also, if this panel it's not hidden on the right, and the students have not hidden that panel on the right, the latest news will also, the latest announcements will be showing up here on the right-hand side as well on this block. And you can add here a new topic, a new announcement directly from that block, or you can preview what you had sent earlier. In this session, I'll demonstrate how to configure forums in a course in Moodle or e-learning. So let's suppose that in our course here, we want to create a forum, a weekly forum, for our students to discuss a specific topic and then for them to interact with one another. To do that, we could use the forum module within Moodle. We click here on Add an Activity or a Resource, and then we choose the forum option. Click on Add, and then simply give it a name. In this case, I'll just try to keep the numbers in sequence in the course activity, so I'll call it 1.7. And then here under the description area, once we put the title, we are going to type in there the content that you want the students to discuss. So we'll press here Control V. I just copied this from earlier. And then you can put in there additional details as well as to how it will be graded and what you expect them to do. So you state they need to post their initial discussion and then respond to at least 2 other peers in the class, and then how you're going to grade this as well. Now, there are different types of forum discussions that you can use in a course, and the default one here is what we recommend that you utilize. Basically what that will do is create a listing, different thread for each student in the class. So once each student responds and posts their response, then other students in the class will be able to go and engage and reply to that particular student. So there will be separate threads. If you want the students to first post their own and then see other peer responses, then you might want to consider the Q&A forum. However, there is a tricky part to it that you need to post the question initially. You need to do that initial post that I'll show in a little bit and how to do it. But in most cases, we do recommend that you simply use a standard forum for general use. As far as finding out more details for these, you can always click on this little question mark and it will explain additional details as well. So then you could go under other areas and other settings here. We do not recommend that you do cutoff dates and starting dates and such. You could, if you are going to stay on top of those dates. However, it can frustrate the students if you don't make clear, if you don't have the right settings in the forum, and then if you don't notify them as to what the parameters are going to be for that particular forum. Under attachments and such, you could control how much or what the students can upload and how many words and all that type of stuff to display the word count if you'd prefer. Then subscription and tracking. This is basically what controls the correspondence. Typically, we recommend that you use a subscription mode here to optional subscription. It allows the students to get email notifications, or it allows them to unsubscribe and not receive them. We have found that some students want the notifications, some others don't. And then read tracking, you can choose to make this optional as well. Basically, then the students will see, and you'll see how many forum posts you have not read yet in the course. Other areas here that you might want to consider and look at would be under the grade area. This is where you can specify under which project this falls under, provided you have configured the grade book. Then under ratings, this is kind of key. This is where you specify whether you are going to grade each post or not grade it. And this is what tells the system to show this forum activity in the grade book or not show it. So basically, in most cases here, you could choose sum of ratings and this setting, or you could use the average of ratings as well. Sum of ratings would be, let's say you're going to grade the first post out of 80 points and then each subsequent post up out of 10 points. Then the system will add, let's say 75 that the student scored for the first post, then 10 for the second post, and 9 for the third post, and that came to 94 out of 100. And in that case, the system will record an A, for example, in that for that activity in the course. If you choose average of ratings for each post, that means that each post you're going to grade it against 100 points, and then the system is going to add however many times the student participated, and in each discussion and each response and such, and then the system is going to post the average of those ratings. Now, the problem with the average of ratings is that sometimes the student may do poor work on the first post that requires more effort, and then their grade gets bumped up because on their responses they can bump up their grade. However, that's why we suggest that you use a sum of ratings here. Now, once you go here under sum of ratings, this is where you can then specify how many points you're going to grade against. So if you state it up in the description here, 80 points for the first and 10 points for each subsequent response, then we'll use 100 points. So just try to keep in mind what you set that high ceiling or the standard there. Now, you can also use here, instead of points, you can use a particular scale if you'd prefer. And these would be either system-based scales or customized scales for your institution. For example, here at Cairn, we have a bunch of those defined here. And one of them is, for example, the School of Business forum grading. Or you could have something like this, for example, novice, competent, proficient, or exceptional. So any of those, basically the idea here would be that once you choose either one of those, instead of assigning points, you're choosing one of those options listed in here. So for now, I'm going to keep this configured as using points, and we're going to use 100 points. We don't suggest that you mess with the restricting of ratings, putting any dates in there, because then the system will not allow you to grade any of such stuff after that deadline that you might set in here, and then you're going to wonder what happened and why it's not working. Under activity completion, you can choose to utilize it. By default, it is that students can mark this activity completed manually. However, you can change this to be conditional, where the student would be required to have 3 posts or discussions, and that's when they'll get a check mark or the system will mark it as completed. If this doesn't show up on your end, that means that in your course configuration, the completion tracking is not enabled. Now, this stage, we click on Save and Return to the course. And at this point, we have configured the forum for this course. The students will be able to click on it. They'll see what the requirements are, the additional details, and then they'll simply click on Add a new discussion topic. They'll put in a subject, the message here, and then they'll press Post to the forum. And in the next segment, I'm going to demonstrate how to grade one of those forums and how to post the grades for each student responses. In this session, I'm going to demonstrate how to grade or rate the forum posts in e-learning or Moodle. In this case, we have a forum that we created and configured earlier here, and we'll click on it. And we have the forum requirements here, and then further down we have the responses from the students. Now the responses typically will show up as separate threads similar to this, and that's because we chose the standard forum format earlier. For me as an instructor to go and grade this forum or rate this post, we can click on each one of the titles here under the discussion column, and notice it shows who submitted this. And then we'll be able to see here the content when it was posted and such, and what the student posted as well. Now, right below here, this is where we can rate this post. So if earlier we stated that we are going to rate this against 80 points for the initial response, and then any subsequent comments and such, we're going to rate them against 10 points. So in this case, if he did really well, in this case the Karen student, then they would be awarded 80 points. But in this case, let's say they didn't do very well, and let's say I want to award 76 points. So you simply, from the drop down here, you select 76, and then notice it's going to post it right here. Now, for each student, if you prefer, you can also click here under Reply, and then you can type a short reply to that particular student, provided you also check this private reply option. So this would be explaining as to why they missed a couple of the points. Now note, obviously this, if it's going to be trying to help the student or steer them in the right direction and such, and you don't want this to be public to other students, make sure again that you check the private reply post. Otherwise, by default, that response is going to be posted for all the students in the class. Now, to respond to this particular post in the class and to respond to all students, let's say for all students, you simply press reply, you type your reply in here, provided the student's name is John, and then you want to steer them to think more in depth as a whole class on that specific topic or point of discussion. So the idea is that it's best, at least for any of the responses in the class, to target one response per student per week. In that way, it demonstrates that you are involved in the class and that the student appreciates that feedback that you're providing for them in their work and such. Obviously, if you're teaching an online course, the regular and substantive interaction is achieved typically by participating actively in the forums throughout the week. So here you'd provide additional feedback for the student, and then you'd press submit, and that will be public feedback by default. Now notice if it's a private reply, notice it's over here, it will state that it was a private reply to that particular student. If you need to delete a reply that you accidentally entered or typed or whatever there, you can press here delete, and then it will delete it. If there were more than students interacting and they're engaging in this threaded discussion and such, then it'll look very similar to this. Suppose here that the Karen student here replied to my comment, and now And of course, you also want to encourage your students to provide substantive responses and content in their replies, and not just saying good point and that's it. And that would be best to be included in the requirements for the discussion in the forum. So that was the response from the caring student. Now if I go back as the instructor here, in the same discussion thread here, notice how it's aligning them to have like this tiered layout within the discussion. Now if I wanted to reply back to the caring student, it just simply post my response right there and then press submit. Okay, so that's how you rate the posts in the course and how you provide feedback to your students. Now typically, when you have a lot of those forums and threads in the course and you want to move from one to the other and such, it might be helpful to also open these in a new tab for easier grading. So simply right-click on each one of those links here, or discussions, and open them all up, and then you can simply scroll down, rate everything, grade everything here, and provide feedback, and then go to the next tab and the next tab. Or you can use the controls here next to each forum where it says go to Hubert's post next and such. And that'll take you to the next forum as well. But I find that using tabs, it's the easiest way. Now to check the grades for this, and by the way, to rate or grade the responses from each student, you do them in a similar way. So typically the top one, the first one, you'd rate it against 80 points. And those subsequent ones, for example, the response here from the student, you'd want to rate that against 10 points. And you simply pick the points in here. You can press reply, send a private reply to the student and such. And then that grade is going to be posted on the grade book. To get to the grade book, we click here on the left-hand side under grades, and then we go under that specific activity. So notice here 1.7, and notice that Karen student here got an 85. Now you'd say, why did they get a B and not an A yet? The reason for that is because the system is configured for 3 responses and 3 interactions, and they participated only twice on it. So they got a 76 the first time and then a 9 on the second attempt. If they had responded a third time, and also if you graded it, then they probably would have gotten something in the 90s there, and potentially an A- or an A. So that's also important to keep in mind. The other thing to keep in mind as well is that you can always override the grade directly from here, but if you are doing that, and let's say you want to award them a 90 points, then hit enter here. Make sure that you communicate that to them. So that's how you grade the forum posts in the course and provide feedback to your students. Another important component of a course is the use of quizzes. The system will grade automatically true and false multiple choice questions and even matching questions. And then for essay questions, you can go back and just grade the specific essay questions in the course. So in this session, I'm going to cover how to create a quiz using e-learning. So we are in the course here. And now for week 1, we want the students also to take a quiz. So in order to take a quiz, by the way, if your textbook comes with a test bank, then those questions can be imported, and that will probably be another video. But for this video here, I'm going to demonstrate how to create a quiz from scratch, including the questions. So first, it's 2 stages for it. First, you create the shell for the quiz. We're telling the system there is a quiz. And then the second part of it is to add the questions to the quiz. So now we click on Add an Activity here after we have turned editing on in the course. Click on Add an Activity or a Resource, and then we scroll down here under Quiz. So we locate Quiz and then click on Add. Then in here we're going to call it Chapter 1 Quiz. And then under the description, this is where you'd give them a lot of details. Read chapter 1, it's going to be a quiz with so many questions and so on and so on. You can also give additional directions that the quiz is going to be timed once they start. Don't switch to other browsers. Reference here also the academic integrity policy and things of that nature and so on and so on. But basically as many directions as possible. The other thing here is that there are a lot of settings for the quiz setup. One of the options here is, notice there's an option here for expand all. Expand all expands all of these options. So you can set the quiz so that it opens at a specific day and time. And then you can choose to close the quiz at a specific time as well. You can also specify a time, how many minutes the students have to take the quiz. However, keep in mind, if you do not need the time limitation, don't put it in there, particularly if it's a long quiz, because it really can frustrate and put additional pressure on the students. However, if you're focusing on it's a key quiz and you're focusing on academic integrity and all that type of thing, then you specify the time limit as well. Then if you scroll down here, you have the grade section, and this is typically it will look like that, but we just expanded it above, so if it didn't look, just click on the word. Then we click here on Uncategorize, and we choose which category this falls under. Again, the gradebook has to be configured first, so we click here on Quizzes, and then you can specify grade to pass if you need to and all that type of thing. Then attempts, you can also specify how many attempts you want the students to try. How many tries do they get for the quiz? You can allow them multiple times. If the quiz, my suggestion would be that if the quiz, it's not critical to the course, it's just a practice one, it's just to reinforce the learning and so on, maybe you give them multiple tries. But then under the grading method, you can change it so that either the highest grade of all of those attempts takes effect, or it can be the average grade, or it can be the last attempt, and so on and so on. So it just depends on what your preference is. Now here under the layout, this is where you can choose how the questions will be presented to the students. So in this case, it's every question, but yet you can configure it so it will be every 5 questions. So you have 20 questions, it's going to be 4 pages of the quiz for the whole quiz there. So basically 5 questions per page. Notice there's an option here for show more, whether they want the navigation. You can force the students so they have to go in a sequence, or you just let them go free from question to question that they may prefer. For enhancing academic integrity, you can choose to shuffle within questions, and also as far as the feedback, you can want to have the feedback, whether you want it deferred at the very end of the quiz, or you could have immediate feedback after they try each question as well. So then as far as the review options, this is where you can choose whether to display the correct answer, yes or no, during the attempt, after the quiz is closed, and so on. So you make your own mind, make up your mind basically from there. And then you scroll down, you can even require a password for this quiz. Now cases where you'd want a password for the quiz are, because you can limit it by the time, but let's say that 2 students didn't show up for the quiz, and now they have to take the quiz late. You can set a password in the quiz for them to take it either earlier or later and share the password to the students. So that's kind of the key for the password there. You can also reinforce so that they can't try it unless a certain amount of time has passed. The browser security would suggest to leave it alone. If you want to do enhanced browser security, that usually tends to cause more issues. Then the overall feedback, this is basically where you can give them automated feedback. If they scored between, let's say, 90 here and 100%, you can say, great job, you're going to do well in the course, keep up doing the same thing. But if they scored 60 and below or whatever, then you could say you're going to fail the course. So you can give them automated feedback based on the score that they get. So then you scroll all the way to the bottom here and then click on Save and Display. So all that we did so far, or we could do save and return to the course, since we have been doing that for other activities. So at this point, we just have told the system that there's going to be a quiz, and there are some parameters to the quiz, but yet we have not really added any questions to the quiz. So now the stage number 2 here is to click on and configure the actual quiz questions, or add the questions. So we click on the quiz here, Chapter 1 quiz, and it says, well, there are no questions added yet. So we click here on Edit Quiz, and then this is where we add the actual questions. So we click here on Add, and we choose Add a New Question. If we had a test bank, that's where we get the questions, but for now we just have to add them manually. Now you can add all kinds of questions in the quiz, as you can see here on the left-hand side. Multiple choice, it tells you what it does, true and false, and so on and so on. Typically, it's 3 types of questions that are used primarily: multiple choice, true and false, and then essay questions. So let's create first a multiple choice question. So you give it a name to the question. This is just how it will be identified in the system. So you could say Q1. And then, so this would be our question. We could format it to look different. And then here it would be general feedback. If you wanted to specify general feedback for that specific question, whether they scored it correctly or not, this is where you put general feedback. And the answers would be here. So you have basically option A, B, C, and so on. So we say the 4 functions for a computer would be input. So if they choose that, they get no grade. If they choose only output, that would be none as well. So they get no grade for it, or they get 0 basically, or failing grade. And then choice 3, it would be, let's say that's not the right answer either. And then choice 5 is, now remember here you can't say all of the above because the order will be scrambled. So in this case we'll say all of the above, and it will say 100%. So if they choose all of them, all the presented options, then they get a score of 100 in that question. Now we click on Save Changes, and that is one question already added to the quiz. That was a multiple choice question. Notice these dots here. Now we go and add another question, and now we'll add a true and false question. So we click on true and false, add, we give it a name. In some cases you can just copy and paste the same question from the title into the question text. And basically over here it says correct answer. You need to tell the computer which one is the correct answer for this statement. So in this case, we want to say that is correct, that's true. And then we click on Save Changes. So that was a second type of question that we are adding to a quiz. Then we can go here and add another question, and let's say we want to add this question as an essay. Keep in mind that essay questions will not be graded automatically by the computer. And then you can say how many points this question will be, and then click on Save Changes. Now this is where you'd specify the points. So let's say this last one, instead of counting it all equal, let's say I want this to count more. So I can simply click here on Edit Maximum Mark, and I can say I want that to count as 8 points, while the other ones count only as 2 points. And the whole quiz will count only as against 10 points. You can have this against 100 points, let's say, but what that means is that this question will be 80% and those will be only 10% each. So once you have determined the questions and also the maximum points and also the points for each question, you click on Save, and basically the quiz is ready for the students. Now you can also preview it. If you click here on Preview, this is how it will look when the students open it up. And they'll have a timer here because we chose 20 minutes earlier. And then go and take this as a student. This is what the student will see. So they will go to the course, they will click on Chapter 1 Quiz, They'll read the directions, they'll have how many attempts they have, how many minutes they are allowed, how it's going to be graded. They'll click on Attempt Quiz Now. It has a timer, and that's it. So they put the feedback here for the essay question, and then it will give them a grade. It'll give them a grade right away with the correct answer and not the correct answer, but then the essay is not graded yet. So they finish it. Now you as the instructor, you can go back in here, and now you need to grade the essay questions. So notice it says here attempts 1. That means that one student tried to take it and took it. Notice down here you have the report. Here's the attempt. This is the options that they missed. And then here is, you can actually click right here and see exactly which questions, how they did in each question as well. Now notice for question number 3, it says here requires grading. So you can either click over here to requires grading, or you can go under the quiz area here, or quiz administration, and there's this option here for manual grading. In manual grading, this is where you can grade all the essay questions for all the students from one spot. So you click on grade all, and then it will display all the students' essay questions one after the other. And you can put comments here, and then you can give them a mark, 0 out of 8, for example, and then save and go to the next page, and then the grade will be posted for the students. So that's how quizzes work. You basically have to define the quiz parameters first, you add the questions to it, and the students take it. Once the students take it, the grades will be recorded in the grade book. If you have essay questions in the quiz, you have to go in and grade them manually. In this video, I will demonstrate how to create a quiz using drag and drop into text-type questions in e-learning or Moodle. So basically, you have a bunch of questions with blank areas where the student can drag and drop the right answer from a list of provided options. So let's get started. So basically, we'll need to go here to the course first, and we go to a specific week, and now we are going to first create the quiz. Click on Add here for the quiz. Give a name to the quiz, a description. Fill out also any of these other options as to when to open the quiz, when to close it, how long the students have to take the quiz, and so on. Then under the grade, you might want to post the category where the grade should show up. Then as far as the question layout, you can have one question per page or more than one question per page, and so on. And then if you want to shuffle within the questions, you can do that from here as well. Then deferred feedback, that means that the students will get a feedback as to what they got right or wrong at the very end after they complete the quiz. This is where you can specify when the students, whether they can see the proper answers or not, whether right after the attempt or later after the quiz is closed. So this is pretty much if you want to guard the answers to your quizzes. All of these so far are just general for any quiz in Moodle. So now at this point, we click here on the very bottom and we choose Save and Return to the Course, or we could click on Save and Display. For now, I'll just choose Save and Return to the Course so that we see the item has been created. So far, we just have created the shell for this quiz, so now we click on the quiz again. And now here on the right-hand side, we click on Edit Quiz. Now on Edit Quiz, this is an option for us to add questions to this quiz. So now we can click here under Add and then choose a new question. And this is where this tutorial basically starts with what I was trying to demonstrate, is that we want to create a quiz with questions from drag and drop into text. So notice it's going to be missing words in the questions, and those questions are going to be filled with the proper answers by the student dragging and dropping in there. Now we click on Add here, and in this case I'm going to create just one question. So you can give here the question name. This is just for you to identify this question. So you could say question 1. And then here under the question text, this is what the student will see. So this can be separate questions and there are separate areas, or it could be one sentence with multiple missing spots in there. And now wherever you want the student to fill in the blank here, what you need to do is you need to put these double bracket like that, the square ones, then 1, that would mean this is blank number 1, and then double bracket again. So a computer is, the answer would be there, an electronic device which accepts input. So we want to have that as option number 2 with double brackets. Again, we put number 2, accepts input. Then we could say it processes data. And in this case, I'm basically giving them a tip here. I'm leaving the stores data already as part of the sentence there. But basically, as you can understand so far, any of those options, we want them in double brackets. And then 1, 2, 3, those would be the actual answers. Now here under the default mark, you can leave it as 1 in this case, or since we have 4 of those, maybe we could make it 4 points, but you'll have a chance to change those points as well in the next screen here. Now under general feedback, you can specify here whether they got it right or wrong, what kind of feedback you want to give to them. Now in here, the next thing that you want to do is, this is where you put the right answers for these missing, the fill in the blanks here. So now we choose shuffle. We want to shuffle those answers. And the first choice here would be a computer is an electronic device. So here we put electronic. And then option 2, it would be which accepts input. And then option 3 would be processes data. And then stores the data and then produces output. So basically, if you have more than 4 areas, you just keep on adding other sentences. Those you could make them separate, or you could have them all sequential like a story. Now these options here, add to group 1, what these are basically, typically you want to leave those all in group 1. It's just saying it's going to list them all one after the other, just like we listed them here. Now if you have cases where some of them would be nouns and the other ones would be pronouns, and you want them in two separate sections separated from each other, then you'd say, okay, well, this one I want it in group 2, and then this one I want it in group 2. So it's going to just bundle them together when the student sees the options. In our case, for most of the cases, you're going to just have them listed randomly there for the students to view them, no specific grouping. Unlimited, that means that do you want to allow the use of one of those options to be used more than one time as the student enters the answers here. And then basically you can add more choices if you need it here. Combined feedback, if you wanted to provide specific feedback when it's partially correct and so on, you can try that for yourself. Under multiple tries, we're not going to go into that for now, but if you give them multiple tries, how much the penalty would be and so on. Now you click on Save Changes. And at this point, notice it's marking it against 4 points for that question. And if you wanted more than that, so let's say the quiz is 100 points, and then you have only one question for this quiz, then you could change the number of points right here. So you could make that to 100, or if you had 5 questions, each of them would be up to 20 points for each question. So it depends on how your quiz is going to be organized. Now to preview this, you can simply either click on the question to actually preview it, or you can preview the whole quiz. Now to preview this quiz, let's assume it's ready for the students. We're going to have only one question. Now notice this is how it will look. Basically the student will take here a computer is, take electronic, drag it over here, which accepts input, drag it over here, processes data, and the highlighting here is happening because of my mouse. Now the student basically matches these up and then click on next. In this case, I have only one question to the quiz. I click on submit and finish, and I should have scored 100 points in this case. And the student can review it, and that's it. Now, in some cases, you might want to give the students more choices than there are actual options here. So if I wanted to edit this question, I can go here under this little gear right here in front of the question, and I can scroll down here and add additional options. Basically, you're just trying to confuse them with more options than there would be answers for them. Then click on Save, And that's how basically you can create quiz using drag and drop fill-in questions. Hopefully that is helpful, and feel free to check out the other tutorials on e-learning or on the YouTube channel. Thank you. The next item that I'm going to cover here in using e-learning or Moodle is the use of lessons, how to configure a lesson, and how to use the lesson module in e-learning. So before I go into the details of configuring it, I'm going to go over and show you what an actual lesson looks like and what you can do with the specific lessons in Moodle, so that you get an overall idea as to what's possible. So for example, here we have an online course, and by the way, we use those lessons quite a bit in online courses. And if we scroll down here to one of the modules, by the way, all of these that have this little icon in front of them, those are usually lessons. So I'm going to go to one of those lessons here, let's say multiple intelligences and learning styles. So if I click on this, the lesson would look something similar to this for the students, or you can do something very similar to this, and it has a lot of flexibility in what you can do with the lesson module. So basically you can present new content, and the new content can be in text format, it could be pictures, it could be videos, a string of videos specific to a topic, and then after the student completes that video or watches this content, the student can move to the next page. And the next page can be an assessment of some form. So in this case, we have a form of assessment where the student will do some matching of the questions. And of course, I'm not choosing the right options here, so I'm just picking and just for the sake of submitting them. And then once they completed that section, you can direct the students to view additional content. So basically, you're taking them in a sequence of pages once they complete a task to move on to something else, and then assess them on that content, and then have them watch or review some additional content. For example, here we want them to go to a website, and at the end, they have to describe something. So then they move to the next page, and then in the next page we introduce new content as well, and then they end the lesson. In some other cases you could have them take, of course we saw an example of a short quiz to assess them, but also you could have true and false multiple choice questions, which is that type of quiz that you just saw, and also you could have essay questions. So I'm going to demonstrate at this point as to how do we configure one of those lessons for our course. This is an advanced feature, but yet it's a very powerful one, and if you can get to use it in your courses, this will be very valuable for your teaching experience. So what we do here is we turn editing on first in the course, and then we go to add a new resource or actually activity in one of the blocks here. So we're going to go ahead and do this in week 1. So we go here under add a new activity or resource, and then we are going to go and choose here adding a lesson. So we click on add, and at this point we need to configure the shell, or to configure, just tell the system what this lesson is going to be like and all the different parameters. We're not actually creating contents of the lesson yet. The first step is just to define, to tell the system what the parameters are. So we're going to call this lesson 1. You could post a description as well in here, but it's not necessary. This is the content that will be posted on the main page, in the main course page. So you could say review all the pieces of this lesson, you'll be assessed throughout the lesson, all that type of stuff. So then you have here the appearance section of it, and by the way, you can expand all of those blocks by using this button here on the top right. So under appearance here, you could add additional files if you wanted to, like resource files. But instead of doing it there, I'll show you how to attach files in a moment. Now, as far as a progress bar, if the lesson is going to be very complex with multiple pages and so on, you might want to add a progress bar, but it's not necessary. Display an ongoing score. This is if you have quizzes throughout the lesson after they watch or review certain pieces of material. You're quizzing them. They can see the score, how they did so far. So it's up to you to choose that, but don't enable it unless you have those quizzes embedded in it. Display a lesson menu. This is if you have multiple pages again, it's going to display a menu for the lesson. So let's go back here for a second. And in our lesson here, we didn't have a lesson menu displayed. This would be, it would have a new section here as to what the different areas of the lesson are. So if I go and enable them here, this is again a lesson that we have already configured for another course. And if I choose yes to that option and then save and display, now notice it displays us, because this lesson had only 2 pages, it displays us the menu for this lesson. So that's what that option is. In some cases, if you have more than 2 pages, it's going to be many more pieces to it. So that was just the example there. Now let's go back to our course here. The next item here, so display lesson menu, most of the time you don't want to enable it unless you have multiple pages. Minimum grade to display menu, just you can skip that. Slideshow, you can skip that option as well. And if you wanted to look through any of these options, it'll give you an explanation here. Maximum number of answers. This is like if you're creating a multiple choice quiz, it's going to tell you that the default, when you choose multiple choice question, you'll have 4 choices for your answers. That's what that option is. Linking to other activities, you could make it so that it's conditional. They have to complete a previous activity before they do this one. We're not going to go into that depth at this point. And then availability. I don't suggest that you enable those due dates and deadlines and all that type of thing. However, it's up to you, but if you do, you have to keep up with those dates and times. If you choose to use availability, I would suggest that you hide it from the main course page and then enable it from there. As far as the time limit, it's an option that you can enable so that they have only a certain time to complete it. Now, under flow control here, allow students to review. It would be best to allow them to review the questions or to review the content, because again, this is just a lower level type of learning, more type of formative questions and so on. Provide an option to try a question again. That's up to you whether you want to, when you're assessing the students, whether you want them to give them a second chance to try the questions. As far as how many times to attempt the questions, if it's a just practice lesson or a low score, you can give them more than 1 try. So usually I would suggest you give them 5 tries, and then in one of the other options here, we're going to see which one takes priority, basically, which attempt takes the highest priority. Now, as far as grading, you can have those so that they are graded. You can assign points to them. Against 100 points, 10 points, like we learned for other activities. And then you can also specify as to where this falls under what category. The grade category drop down here, it will show up if you have configured the grade book. So if you have not configured it, you need to go back to the grade book and take a look at that part of the video of this tutorial, how to configure the grade book. So for now, I'm just going to put it under home assignments. Practice lesson, yes or no. If you say that it's a practice lesson, what that does is that students can tinker with it, but nothing will be recorded in the grade book. Usually we do not say yes to this option. We want it to be in the grade book. Retakes allowed. You can consider to allow them to retake it, and then the handling of the retakes. Usually it's best to encourage the students to take it as many times if it doesn't count for too much of the course grade, and usually suggest use the maximum. And then under other options here, you can check those for yourself, but we are not going to need to mess too much with this. The other option to consider is, and this is new in this release, is under activity completion, you can choose to enable this option. So you could say, mark this activity as complete after the student is required to have spent X number of minutes on it. So if you expect the students to spend 30 minutes in it, and it's a 30-minute video or whatever it is, and they're spending only 5 minutes on it, then there's potentially a problem. So you could just say it's going to be marked completed only after 30 minutes have passed. So now we are done. We click here, save and return to the course. Of course, we could click save and display. We'll choose save and return to the course, and we are done with all the parameters for the lesson activity itself. We have not added any new content, it's just parameters. It's very similar to configuring the quiz or the forum. So now we click on the lesson one, and there's not really much that you'll see at this point. It's asking us, now you have a lesson, but you have no content for it. So what do you want to do first? Well, we want to potentially add a content page first. So we want to add some kind of resources, something for them to view. If you want to assess them first, that's where you would add the questions. So typically you want the content, some kind of content first. So we do the content, click on add page content, and then we give it a title. So we could say defining computers. And basically you can add all kinds of content in here. It's basically like building a web page at this point. Now you could add also, let's say you could add an image here. Now notice if this button is only one row here, you can choose to make it more than one. Now you can click here to insert an image, and then you just upload an image to your lesson by choosing a file, going to wherever your lecture resources are, and then choosing to upload the file. Of course, this is not necessarily the one that you want, but just as an example. And then you can change the parameters of the image here. I just clicked outside after I chose dimensions. I'm going to say I want it on the right hand side, and then I'm going to click on insert. Then click OK. Now it's on here on the right hand side. You can also include here a link, so you could say review also this PowerPoint. And then you can hyperlink this toward this PowerPoint by simply selecting the text, clicking on this icon here for inserting links, and then going and locating your PowerPoint for this lesson. So notice it says insert URL. You can either post a URL from a website or wherever you may have it on Google Drive or wherever, or you can simply upload it to the system by clicking on this browse button over here. Now we click on, usually you click on choose upload from your computer, choose the file, and then find your lecture, and then upload it. Then click on insert. You can leave all these other options alone, and now this is hyperlinked. You can make it bold. That suggests that you make it bold. And by the way, you can insert PDF files, study guides that same way as well. That's what they do in some of the courses. We put a study guide linked in that area. Now, after you review all of these, also watch this video. And you can go into YouTube and get a video and post the link over here. So if we go to YouTube here, and pick one of the videos, whichever you want, or whichever applies to your lesson, of course. Now, there are a couple ways to insert the video. The easiest one is to copy the URL here. We go to our lesson here in e-learning or Moodle, and then we simply paste it in here and hit enter. And then the system will actually build the video or display the video right there. Or the other option is that you could hyperlink it, highlighting the link, and click on insert. And there is a third option to actually embed it using the code from Google as well. So I'll try to show that in a moment here. So then you could have additional instructions in there. Then the next thing here, it's saying content 1 in the bottom, and this is kind of confusing. It's just going to put a button there in the bottom. So what do you want that button to say? You could say, I want students to click on next page. Or you could say, continue to next page. So basically, this is just a control button. That's what this content 1 is. Of course, you can link to different pages and so on. You could say there lecture 2, and then students click on it, it takes them to lecture 2. Then this item here right below it, it's saying jump. it's saying, where do you want to jump? When the student clicks on continue to next page, what do you want the computer to do? So you say, I want them to move to the next page. Or you could have them move to a specific page within your lesson. So typically, you just choose next page. So these are the two most common options here. Now you have also content 2, 3, and 4. This is pretty much more to confuse you. I'll just ignore those for now. They are a little bit more advanced, but it's for more buttons at the bottom of the page. So then we click on Save Page here. And at this point, we have configured the first part of the lesson. Or we have configured the lesson with just one page of content. And to review it, you can go here under Review, and this is how it will show up. So it's the students will click on it, it will bring them up to this page. They will not have these buttons here, edit and all that stuff. Actually, let me demonstrate what it looks from the real student's point of view. So the student will go to the lesson, they'll see this. These directions, they have an image here. Of course, they don't go together here at this point, but they have access to the PowerPoint. They can click on it and download it. And then they can view the YouTube video. By simply clicking on it, it will be streamed from this page.
Pockets.
And then the students will click, this is that button, the content button that we looked at earlier. They'll have a button for continue to next page. And at this point, it's saying that you have reached the end of the lesson and so on and so on. So let's go back here to our configuration in our course page. And now let's say we want to edit this page. So one of the options is here on the top right, it says Edit Page Contents. Or there is also this Edit button here for editing the whole lesson. Edit Page Contents, it's going to allow us to edit only this specific page that we are working on or looking at. So we click on Edit Page Contents, and now we can tinker more with this page if we wanted to. So let's say I don't like that image there anymore, and I want to leave just the PowerPoint, and I want to leave the YouTube video. Then click on Save Page, and it's updated and live and ready to go. Now, the next thing that you can do is that you can go into this lesson and add additional items to it. So you can add a short quiz. So let's learn how to add a short assessment quiz to this lesson. It will be all bundled as part of the lesson, not as a separate entity like we discussed earlier in quizzes. So to add a short assessment quiz for this lesson, we can click here under Edit, the Edit tab here, and now it's displaying that we have already one page for this lesson. Now we want to add a new page. Now at this point it's asking us, well, what kind of page do you want to add? We want to choose a question. It's going to be some kind of form of assessment. So we click on Question, and then it will ask us what type of question we want to ask or utilize. And typically you would want to use true and false, multiple choice, and also you can have these other types as well, such as essay questions as another common one. So let's learn first about multiple choice. We click on Add a Question page after we choose multiple choice. And now it's going to give us the choices or the entry to create the multiple choice questions. We say computers. We type the title. That'll be the title for the students to see and also for the computer to record it, but then we need to copy and paste the question. This is what the student will actually see as part of the question. Then it's asking us, well, what's option 1? So we say a computer is any device that performs the following functions. So we say accepts input. You could give them an automated response, and this is, by the way, highly recommended that you do when you're configuring those quizzes. So you could say, that is correct. However, I'm going to copy this. And then we are saying here, if the student chooses this option A here, or this answer, what do we want it to do? We are saying, okay, jump to the next page. But then, do we want to give them a grade for it, like a score for it? In this case, we'd say, no, that's not the correct answer because there are more pieces for it in order to This is only one piece of the puzzle for a computer. So then we said processes data. That's option 2. So that's again part of a multiple choice question. And then you could give them some kind of instant feedback as soon as they choose this option. This is what will show up, and you can customize that. Now it says here jump to. You always want to make sure that it jumps to the next page. And at this point there is no option to make that the default, but you need to make sure that as soon as a student chooses this option, you want them to be able to move forward to the next page in the lesson. As far as the score, if this were the right answer, we'd give them a 1 here, or some kind of score. Now, this is still not the right answer. Now, the next option here is stores data. And you give them some feedback, and then you say next page, and still they don't get this is not the correct answer. And then answer number 4. You give them some feedback, and you say it's next page. Again, this is very important, and there's still no score here. We need one more option here. It's not going to be just 4 questions here, but we need to add an additional option. And this is derived from the lesson configuration. So we need another choice because my multiple choice is going to have 5 choices. So I'm going to click on Save Page here, and we need to tinker with the lesson configuration for just a second here. We're going to go here under the Edit Settings. And if you're not going to have more than 4 answers for your multiple choice, you don't need to worry about this. You can skip the next minute here. We'll go here under Edit Settings for the lesson. And this is, by the way, how you can change the settings for your lesson. And if we go here under number of answers, we want to change this to 5. And go back, Save and Display. And then we want to go and edit that question that we created earlier. So we click here on the Edit tab. And then we click here on Multiple Choice Question, and we want to tweak it or change it. So we want to click on this gear icon to configure it and edit it. And then basically we go back to add answer number 5. So answer number 3, it's this one, stores data. Answer number 4, and then option number 5 is, and you could say that is correct. And then we click here under next page, and then we choose the score here. The score can be anything higher than 0. So you could make it 5 points depending on how difficult the question is. So one of the questions could be 5 points, another one could be 2 points, another one can be 15 points. Now those will be calculated against the total for that lesson. So if you set in the lesson configuration it's going to be graded against 100 points, then if this is 10 points, that's going to be 10% of this lesson. If it were 5 points, that would be 5%. So the percentage here would be against the score for that lesson. Then we click on Save Page, and at this point we have 2 pages to our lesson. To preview it, you can click here on Preview, and the student will see the first page here, have to watch the video and so on. Then they have to continue to the next page, and then they have to take this short quiz and then press Submit. As soon as they press Submit, they'll get the feedback that is correct and so on, and they'll continue. Let's learn about true and false questions. So we go here under Add a New Page under the Edit tab for the lesson, and then we choose another question here, and then we'll say true and false. Add a question page. We give it a title. So here for correct response we put true, and if they choose the true option here, the true response or the correct response, this is what you can put as feedback, automated feedback. And if they choose the correct answer, also this is how many points you're going to give them. Make sure that this says next page, and then if they choose the wrong answer, which would be false, then you can give them feedback automated, and then also you can choose the path here. So you always need to make sure that it's the next page. And then if they choose the wrong answer, they will get a 0 for this question. So then we click on Save Page. And then so far the lesson has 3 pages. Now in lessons you can also do and add a page which would have an essay question, and also you are presenting content at the same time. So the way you do that is by clicking on Add a New Page and then choose Question, and then you could say here I want to create an essay question. Add a new question page, and then at this point we'll be able to give it a name here, and then in here you could put all kinds of directions. So you basically could put all the content that we presented on the first page, you could post it in an essay question, provided you want them to answer an essay question. You put basically the directions in there, link to PowerPoint like we did earlier. You could put a link to a YouTube video if you want them to watch the YouTube video. And then you could say, before proceeding any further, and you could of course make this bold and formatted with different colors and all that type of stuff. And then we are saying here that when we grade this, by the way, we have to grade this usually. So let's say we're going to grade it against 15 points. Then we click on Save Page. So that'll be the score for grading for this part of the activity. Now, so far we have 4 pages to our lesson. By the way, most faculty, they would use only this last option that I showed here, which would look something like this. Basically, the student clicks on the lesson, you present the directions for it, the student has to respond to it, and so on. Or it would look under the preview option here. It would look like this. That's the last page. Actually, that's the first page. Then they come to the next page, which would be the quiz. Then they answer another short quiz here. And then this is the last page where you're presenting the content and the student has to type an answer here and then submit it. So that's basically how it will work, and this is how it will look for the students. So you as the instructor, you'd go back into your lesson, into your course, and let's say you want to see a report of what's happening and who viewed the lesson and who answered the questions and what the scores were and all that type of thing. So you go into the lesson itself, and then I don't want to go to the last page I saw, I want to go to the very beginning. And then you go and preview the lesson. You have these options here. You can preview it, basically see what the students see, edit the lesson, but here are a couple other options. There's a reports option where you can see a report of all that the students did. It tells you how long they spent on the lesson and what score they got in that specific lesson. And it'll give you a listing of all the students in this course. Of course, at this point I have only a couple of students here and only one of them has taken it. Now the other thing that you can do here is you can view detailed statistics, and also you can go in and grade the essays. So to grade the essays, usually this has to be done manually, of course. You'll have a listing of all the students with all of these responses. Sometimes students may go more than once to take the lesson, and therefore you have to grade each one of them as well. So in our case here, we want to grade this. The easiest is to right-click on each essay and then click on Open Link in New Tab. Once you open it in New Tab, you'll view their response. So it says here, My Answer. And then you have a box here to put your comments, and also you have an option to grade this. If you remember, we gave it 15 points, so the highest points, it gives you a drop down of that number for this specific question. So you give it a score here, save changes, and then go back to your lesson. Now, after you grade those, you can also email all the students those graded essay questions, and they will get the feedback that you provided for them. So I strongly suggest you can email individual students directly from this link next to their item, or you can click on email all essays and it will email it to all of them. Now in this case, if we go here to reports, if you noticed earlier, the score earlier, it was 33.33 because we had not graded yet the essay question. Now notice once we graded the essay question, they have a 50% score, and that score was automatically updated. Now those grades, they trickle down to the grade book. So if we go here to our test course and we go to the grades, now for this lesson, that will show up also in the grade book. So here it is, lesson 1, and that's the grade that the student received. So that's how lessons work. I hope it was clear enough to potentially make sense of it and try it and experiment with it. But it's a powerful feature that you can utilize more effectively for your courses. In this video, I'll demonstrate how to configure attendance in Moodle or e-learning. In each course, you need to create one instance of the attendance module, and the attendance module is an add-on module to the standard Moodle installation or the e-learning installation. So to create the attendance module, we first need to turn editing on in the course. So we click here on the gear icon, then click on turn editing on, and then typically you'd put the attendance somewhere at the very top of the course here. We click on add an activity or a resource, and then we choose the option for attendance. Then click on add, and you can leave the name the way it is, and for the description you can put a description if you'd prefer. Now under the grade area, this is where you would specify whether you're going to penalize the students who are missing attendance or not penalizing them. So in this case, I'm going to leave it using points. So it's going to use points and then 100 points. Then here under the grade category, you could also choose what category you want to apply the attendance to, provided you have configured the grade book. Then scroll down and then simply click on Save and Return to the course. So far, we just have configured an item here in the system called attendance. However, we have not defined yet as to what weeks and when the class meets and when to take attendance in this class. So to do that, we need to click here under Add Session, and then we specify the date when the class starts and date as well. So let's say the class starts on September 1st. Now here you can choose either the drop down here, these for each area. So September 1st, 2019, or you could have chosen this calendar option here as well. And then let's say the class starts at 9 a.m. Notice that these times here, they would be in the military time. And then let's say that the class ends at 10 a.m. in this case. And then here under description, this is where we want to put something to simply identify each instance for this class. And then under the next option here, it says create calendar event for this session. Basically, that's going to add it to the student calendar in e-learning or Moodle here. Now, if we simply leave it with these options and then come down here and press add, the system is going to create only one instance for September 1, 2019. However, you can also choose here multiple sessions, and you can choose to repeat the configuration that we defined here above. We can repeat it to a particular set criteria. So basically, we put a check mark in here under repeat this session, and we say that the class, for example, starts on every Monday, or this class takes place every Monday, every Wednesday, and Friday from 9 to 10 o'clock. And then you could state that you want to repeat this every week. That's provided, of course, your class typically meets weekly. And so basically you'd leave that there as number 1, every 1 week. And then we'd repeat this, let's say, until December 12th, 2019. And then further down here, you can choose to allow the students to record their own attendance as well if you'd prefer. If you need help with this, you could simply click on that option and learn more about that function. Then click on Add, and now notice that the sessions have been created for each time for that sequence of parameters that we defined earlier. So this would be from September 2nd, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, all the way till December 12th. Now, if for some reason, let's say it's Thanksgiving, or it's a time that you are not meeting with your students and such, in that case, you can simply go to that particular week and simply delete that particular instance. So let's say I want to delete this one for 11/25. Let's assume that's Thanksgiving here in that specific date, or Thanksgiving break. We can click here, find the specific date, and then simply choose to delete the session. Now, if for some reason you entered the wrong dates and all that type of stuff, it's probably easiest and best to simply go to the main course page, delete the activity completely, and then recreate the steps that I simply did so far. Now, under the attendance here, notice also that you have these additional controls here, so you can see all past attendance records, although you can view it by month, by week, or by specific days as well. If you cannot locate something, just make sure you choose the All option here. Now, one other thing here is under the status set. This is where you can specify how you want to mark the students in the class. How do you mark them and what points you want to assign to them? So for example, for them to show up for class, they could get, if you can mark them as P for present, or that would be the definition for it basically, and L for late, and that would be 1 point, and then E would be for excused, and A would be for absent. You can change those to be a different type of acronym and a different description and different points as well. This comes in handy if you're grading this activity, if you're keeping track of the attendance and then impacting the student's grade. That's how you configure attendance in e-learning or in Moodle. Next, we're going to learn how to take attendance in a class in Moodle. In this session, I'll demonstrate how to take attendance in e-learning or Moodle, the Moodle Learning Management System. Earlier, I demonstrated how to configure the attendance in the course, and if you need help with that, please refer to the previous tutorial on configuring the attendance. Now I'm going to demonstrate how to actually take attendance in class. So typically you'd go to the course, and then you'd scroll down to and find the attendance record. It's important to understand that you need only one of those records on the course page here. You don't need to create one for each week that the class meets, because you create that within this attendance record. You click on it, and then you find the day that you want to record the attendance for the students. So let's say we go here under the 4th of October, and you find that specific date, and then you click on this blue triangle here, which says Take Attendance. Once we click on Take Attendance here, then simply you basically be able to see a list of students here in your course, and then the easiest would be to simply press P here for present for all students. So you're marking everybody present, and then you call everybody's name in the class, and then you mark the ones that are either not present or excused and such. Now here you can also put notes. So if I mark this as excused, you could put notes in there, see email from 10/1. So basically these notes, these remarks would be for your own reference. And then simply press Save Attendance here. And now attendance has been taken for October 4th. So if we scroll down, the record where we have taken attendance here would be clickable. Notice the other ones, you couldn't click on them unless you click on the blue triangle here. And you can either click on the actual record here to open it up and update something about the attendance in the class, or you could go to this green icon on the right hand side of that specific record and you can change the attendance and update. For example, somebody who eventually showed up for class, you can go and mark them as present if necessary. And then press Save Changes. Now the students, of course, will be able to see their own records on their end when they sign into the system, as well as you here being able to see a report of all the users in this class. So if we go here under Report, and this is how you'd be able to see it, click on Report, you'd be able to see specifically for each student when they were present and when they didn't show up for class. Notice here that on 10/4 that I took the attendance here. This is how it will show up if everybody is present. If somebody is absent, they'll have a score of 0 out of 2. And then they see the percentage in the very far right and such. So that's how you take attendance in the course, and that's how you update the records for the attendance in the e-learning system. In this brief video, I'll demonstrate how to create a Zoom activity, a live web conferencing session within your course in e-learning or Moodle. Now, this also assumes that you have already configured and integrated Zoom into Moodle. In our case here at Cairn University, we have Zoom configured and it's available for all courses in the learning management system. So to schedule and configure a Zoom activity, we simply need to go to that particular week or unit in the course. Then we click under Add an Activity or a Resource, and then simply scroll down and choose Zoom Meeting. Then click on Add, and then provide a name for this item. I'm going to keep the numbers in sequence there, so I'm going to name it 1.8 Live Web Conference. It's also, if you're teaching online, it's important that you state also the time zone and such. And then under the description area, you might want to put details in there about this particular activity. So here you could state that a webcam is required and also a link for them to test the system beforehand. And this is the valid link to put in your course, and you can also hyperlink it as well. And provide additional directions. Now, if you want this to show up on the main course page, you simply put a check mark here, display description on the main course page, and that will be supplemented with those directions. Now, by default here, you technically could simply click and leave all these other options alone here, and simply click on Save and Return to the course. Now, this means that you can start this meeting at any point, and it's not tied to any dates or times. The students will join you based on the title on the top of your item that you created on the course. If you'd prefer to set a specific date and time, then you need to uncheck this recurring option and then put the correct date and time. And remember that you cannot test this until half an hour prior to the scheduled time. So make sure that those dates and times are correct here. The other option here as well is, notice that it's going to enable to join before the host. That means that the students can actually start this meeting before you are ready to join them and get in there. Typically, the system will also email you that your students are waiting for you, and it serves as a nice reminder in case you forgot to join the meeting. Now, Once you're set with that, whether you're choosing the recurring option or the dates here, doesn't matter which one option you choose, and then you press save and return to the course. Then in this case, the students and you will start the meeting from here. So you'll need to advise the students that all these Zoom meetings will start from the course, and you and the students will click on it. You'll see the details. They'll be able to test the system if necessary, and then you as the owner of this meeting have the option to start it, and the students typically have the option to join. Their button here, it will be a blue button, it will say join meeting. Once you press start meeting, it will prompt you to launch your web camera and your microphone, and you'll be set. So it will look like this. You might need to click on Open Zoom Meetings, and that's in case you didn't have Zoom installed in your computer. It's going to prompt you to install it, to download and install a small piece of software, and you just install it just like any other item on your computer. Then you click on Open Meeting, and then you can choose here Join with Computer Audio, or you can use, and the students as well could join by using a phone call. So in case they have audio issues, they can dial any of these numbers and then put in this meeting ID, and they'll be able to listen to what's happening in the course using a regular phone. If we wanted to join here using a computer, they'll simply click here Join using Computer Audio, and then you're up and running. Then you can control the microphone from here. You can start with a video, so make sure you're able to choose to start with a video from here. So you just click on it once, and then under Manage Participants, this is where you can see who has joined you in your meeting. Then when it comes time for you to, let's say you're interacting with the students, their cameras are on and you're interacting with them and such, then if you want to go over the lesson or something and share something from the course page, you simply, by the way, this toolbar, notice it disappears at times, so you simply move the mouse to the bottom and it will show up. At this point you can click on Share if you want to share your screen, and then you simply click on Share again, and then it's going to share whatever you have on the desktop. So whatever at this point you want to demonstrate to the students on your PC here or on your course, they'll be able to see it from their end. Now I'm going to go back, let's say, to the course here, and all of this, it'll be projected to their screens. Keep in mind, if you move the mouse to the very top of the screen here, notice there is also this annotate tool that you can utilize, and you can simply then highlight and underline things and go over things just like as if it were a whiteboard or a touch screen on your computer. So then move the mouse to the very top, and then those tools will show up again. When you're ready to stop the sharing, you can click here on Stop Share on the top, and that will stop the screen sharing with your students. By the way, the students can share the screens as well, so you can invite them to do their presentation or to share their screen the similar way. Notice that by default the meeting is going to be recorded, and you can control it from up here, the recording. It's best typically to let it record and then send and post the link to that recording the next day once you receive an email about it in your course, for other students that might have missed this live session. Keep in mind also that there is an option here for chat, and this is where you'll see any students that have questions. They might post the questions in there, and you can respond also to individual students or to everyone from the same area here. Once you're done with the meeting, to close it, you simply click here on End, and notice it's kind of hiding behind my screen here, but it's in the bottom right here, End Meeting, and then it'll prompt you to end the meeting for all. And at this point, after about, depending on how long your meeting was, anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour's time, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording. In this session, I'll demonstrate how to link two courses in e-learning and create a metacourse. A metacourse is when you have two courses, the second course is linked to the first one, and then the students from the second course, they show up on course 1, and also they show up in the gradebook. The benefit for it is the faculty maintaining only one of the courses instead of two. So here's how it's done. You basically go to the main course that you want to make as the primary. In this case it's TSL 692, or we use the grad versions typically, making them the main one. So we go to the grad version of the course, then we go here under participants, then we go under the gear icon here and then choose enrollment methods. Then we click here on add a method and then click on course meta link and then search for the course. In this case the faculty has requested TSL 492 to be added to e-learning as the secondary course. So you can just simply type TSL 492, and this may take a while to come up. Make sure that it matches the semester, so you have fall 18, and then once you have made sure it's the proper course and then the proper section as well, in some cases you might have section 01 and section 00, and 00 needs to be linked with the grad version of 00, and 01 may need to be linked to the 01 section of the grad version. So just pay attention to that, and then click on add method, and now at this point that's all that you have to do to link the courses. So the students from the 492 section will have access to the grad version of it. At this point, advise the faculty that they need to post a note on the undergrad version or on the second course for the students to use the grad section of the course, or the main course, or the meta course in this case.